Alright, this video is going to be on how natural selection fits in with creation versus evolution controversy. And first of all, I'm going to tell you guys what natural selection is. For those of you who are already very educated in science, please just bear with me for a moment. What natural selection is it's a theory in biology that the more likely something is to survive in a current environment and be able to reproduce, then the more likely it is to pass on its genes to more offspring. And for example, let's say we have a field of grasshoppers where all of the grasshoppers are yellow, and we'll say there's 1,000,000 grasshoppers, and one day there's a mutation where one of them turns green. Now this grasshopper is going to blend in with the grass more, and birds are less likely to eat it. They'll eat the yellow grasshoppers and generally leave the green ones alone. So over time, over the course of several generations, and this can actually happen very, very quickly, the majority of the grasshoppers will be green, because those that are green are able to survive. They were able to go on and find a mate, and then they were able to have babies with that mate, and those babies will end up those babies that end up inheriting the green genes will be more likely to survive to pass on those green genes to their offspring. Now, that's natural selection in a nutshell, and we do observe this in nature, and both creationists and evolutionists accept the fact that natural selection happens. We observe it all the time in nature. We have hundreds and hundreds of examples. Now, I recently watched a video by an evolutionist by the name of Coyne, and he's associated with Richard Dawkins, who is probably one of the world's top advocates for Darwinian evolution. And Coyne he made it sound like one thing he said that natural selection was a prediction of evolution, and that's just sheer and utter nonsense. The idea that natural selection was predicted by evolution is like saying that a psychic came out in the year 2000 predicting that men will one day land on the moon. Well, we know they already landed on the moon. It was in the 1960s that happened. So it's making, to say natural selection is a prediction of evolution is making a prediction after we already know something to be true. And that's not a very good prediction. That's not even a prediction. That's just stating something that we already knew to be true and calling it a prediction. But anyway, it was several decades before Darwin came around. There was a scientist who was a creationist. His name was Edward Blyth, and he was the first one to describe natural selection. I have never heard of him in any of my classes. He's somebody that I had to research separately. And like I said, he was a creationist. Very often you'll hear evolutionists go around and they make it sound like creationists don't believe in mutation, that we don't believe in natural selection. But that's just plain not true. There's plenty of PhD scientists out there who are creationists. We know that natural selection happens. We were the first ones to explain it. And we were the first ones to describe it. And we know that mutations happen. Remember, even the father of modern genetics, Gregor Mendel, was a young Earth creationist. And it's I'm sorry guys, one second. The idea that natural selection is only compatible with evolution is just sheer and utter nonsense. So what we do disagree on is what natural selection and mutation are actually capable of. Evolutionists want to give mutation and natural selection a kind of this superpower that they want to. For today's modern evolutionists, the modern idea of evolution is called Neo-Darwinism. It's also called modern synthesis. And what that says is that over time in a population, you'll have mutations, and they're totally random, they're totally unguided. There's no God, there's no sky frog people, there's nobody intelligently guiding the process. There's mutation and natural selection, and it's a totally unguided process. There's no outside intelligence guiding it. That is what Neo-Darwinism is. That's what we're referring to when we talk about evolution today. To say that, well, I believe in evolution, but I believe God guided it, is a contradiction in terms. It's like saying, well, I believe that God guided the random unguided process. It's self-contradictory. Mutation is random. It might be, sometimes it's just random copying errors that just happen, and sometimes it's caused by the environment. And natural selection is just, hey, in this environment, this particular factor would be the most beneficial, and that is what we're going to favor. Now, what creationists believe is, we believe that there's mutation and natural selection are capable of doing a lot. They're capable of giving antibiotic resistance to bacteria, which is not as wonderful as it sounds. I mean, it's just basically that there's some defective molecules in the bacteria that ends up that was the result of a mutation, and that's why it has the resistance to antibiotics. We believe that, hey, if you have a plant out there with a flower on it, the flower might become bigger or smaller, depending on the mutation and natural selection. Now, here's where what evolutionists claim is that you can have a creature out there with no eyes. It's never had eyes. It's never had any ancestors with eyes, and over time it can gradually develop an eye. Over time, fish can gradually develop from having just fins to developing legs. They can develop they can develop lungs when it never had the genetic information for lungs before. But they can gradually develop this information over the course of generations and generations by mutation and natural selection, and this is where we disagree. So it's not the size of the change; it's the type of change. It's not that I stay away from the terms microevolution and macroevolution because I think that they're very confusing. What they actually describe is correct. That microevolution is just never. It would be correct to say the creationists generally accept microevolution and not macroevolution, but it would be an incomplete picture. It will only be 95%. It's not the size of the change; it's the type. Anyway, that's my video on how natural selection fits into the creation versus evolution controversy. Check out some of my other videos as well. Feel free to leave the comments and post everything, but also please remember that I cannot. This is just one video. It's meant to be about a little over 5 minutes long, and I cannot possibly answer every single objection to evolution or every single argument for evolution, every single objection to creation that is out there. I just simply cannot do it. Please see my other videos. Please see the websites that I will link to, because I can't answer every single one all the time, saying, well, there's so much evidence for evolution out there. What it really is there's so many arguments for evolution out there. But when you pick apart each piece of evidence, at the end of the day, it really supports creation more than it does evolution. But you got to hear both sides. You got to hear there's scientists that support evolution, there's scientists that don't. It's important to hear both sides. That is how you become educated. All right. God bless y'all, and I'm going to leave you with one Bible verse. It's Matthew 11:28. It says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and loaded down with burdens, and I will give you rest." Or, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest." And that's Jesus in Matthew 11:28. All right, God bless y'all, and have a good evening.